and welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. Hi. I'm so sorry I didn't get a video out last week. I was really down with a bad cold. I don't know if you can maybe still hear it a bit. I've still got like a sniffle and a sore throat and the brain fog. So fingers crossed I can get through this. And today I'm going to be doing a very spoiler-free, more of a book chat than a review, and I'm going to be talking about A Case of Life and Limb. And this is by Sally Smith. It is the second book in the Trials of Gabriel Ward series, and the next one is actually out in a few days from this going live. I think it's the 15th of January that it comes out, and I'm really excited for it, and I'm really excited to talk about this one. So yeah, anyway, I'm just going to get into a quick little, very brief synopsis, and you'll understand quickly why this is going to be so brief before I get into talking about why I just love this book and trying to convince you that you need to read this if you are a cozy historical crime fan. So for a brief synopsis, it is Temple 1901. It's the end of the year. It's like sort of Christmas time, and body parts are being sent to people within Temple, and they're appearing as like Christmas gifts that are, you know, they're unwrapping, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, that's like a hand or a foot or an ear. And this ends up, after a few have been delivered, having very lethal consequences. And at the start of it, after the first package is sent, Gabriel Ward is asked to look into it after the work he did on investigating the murder in A Case of Mice and Murder. And for the B plot, it is a slander case. It is a music hall performer called Topsy Tillotson. This like rag of a newspaper has claimed that someone has slept with her, and she's like, I've never even heard of this man. This is slander. I am going to sue you. I'm going to take you down. And she has Gabriel Ward as her barrister. And that is really all I am willing to say. And the reason is this is a very plot-driven story. So, you know, while the characters are obviously important and they are brilliantly written, this is a really tight, succinct plot. Everything works here. And because of that, it's difficult to really talk about it without going into major spoiler territory, because everything in this book just ties in so neatly. It is absolutely worth the read. It doesn't feel like rushed as well. It could very easily, particularly for like the third act, start to feel really rushed. And yeah, it just took a really good pace, and I just found it really enjoyable. And I think part of that is that it's the setting. There is just no other book like this. You could not move this book outside of Temple and have this work. And there's a reason for this. See, at the time, the law was that Temple was kind of its own, it wasn't even kind of, it was its own thing. They managed themselves. They were their own, like, you know, they dealt with the law internally. The police had to be invited in. And what I found really fascinating was that actually that law hasn't changed. It's now symbolic. You know, if a crime is committed within Temple, the police will be brought in. However, technically they don't have to. It's a symbolic thing. It's, you know, the law is still there. Which I found that really nice little touch that I found out like down the line. And the thing is, you know, we talk as writers and as readers at times as well about the setting, or the place should feel like a character in its own right and part of the story. That is good storytelling. And this has it down to a fine art. Now, I think what helps is that Sally Smith is an ex-barrister, and still, I think, if I remember what I read in here right, still lives in Temple. She has lived and worked there throughout her career. And her knowledge of the history of the place and her love of the place shines through on every page. And very channeled through Ward, who, you know, really just chooses not to exist outside of it. You know, he does not leave Temple unless absolutely forced, and is not thrilled when he has to. But yeah, because because of this, you could not put this book anywhere else and have it work. And it's where, and I don't want to like dunk on Murder at the Mayfair Hotel to big this book up. I don't think it needs it, but I think that's where this worked, where Murder at the Mayfair Hotel didn't. So obviously Murder at the Mayfair Hotel, the management are like, don't talk to our customers, and that was just left at that. But with this, it was, we don't have to have the police in here. We are choosing to. And it was actually a thing that was real and genuine, so it made a lot more sense. And yeah, I just really appreciate that. And Temple is a really fascinating place. It's well worth looking up the history of it. You know, I've actually seen it. I've been there once many years ago, and it is a really fascinating place. So if you are in London, I do believe they actually do group tours occasionally. It's worth looking up, or just look at the history of it anyway, because it is fascinating. And you know, going off the back of like characters and the Temple feeling like a character, the characters in this are all so well written. You don't find yourself getting confused from person to person because everyone's got their own foibles, everyone's got their own little things that make them who they are. And also the fact that obviously this is the second book, you've seen the relationship between Gabriel Ward and Constable Wright growing, and it feels very natural and it feels really well done. It feels so beautifully constructed. So there is a moment where it actually does comment that they haven't seen each other since A Case of Mice and Murder. And it's sad, but it makes sense because they are, you know, one is working class, one is upper class, and we do get a bit of Gabriel's history of just how upper class he was. He's been disinherited, and I'm actually going to say, we'll put a pin in that briefly because I'm going to talk a little bit about that in more detail and the reasoning behind it. So, yeah, anyway, they haven't seen each other, but it is that wonderful friendship where you don't see each other, but as soon as you're back together, it's like no time has passed. And they just work so well together because they are so different, but their differences complement each other. So I was really happy to see like the friendship, you know, the seeds have been planted in the first book and you can see it starting to grow. And it's just, yeah, it's just well constructed and it feels genuine. And you enjoy following them. And what's nice is they don't have like, they're not constantly together because, as I said, this follows the plot, not the characters. So you will see them going off and doing their own thing, and you will, you know, maybe not see Wright for a little bit and then follow Gabriel and what he's doing, or you might be following Wright and not have Gabriel. It's really well done. And going off on characters as well, the new character of Topsy Tillotson, who, you know, I don't expect to see in future books, unfortunately, is just brilliant. She could have so easily been very caricaturish, but she wasn't. So she's a musical star, and, you know, look, musical stars weren't hugely like respected because they were just seen as performers, and performers were seen as quite low in the old pecking order, even though they had like money, they didn't have respect. And this does play into the story, and unfortunately so it's also because she's a woman, and this is a time, you know, bear in mind it's 1901, 1902. Women's rights just weren't a thing. And I'm kind of slightly bringing that up because I did see someone give A Case of Mice and Murder a bad review because they felt like the women didn't have autonomy. It was 1901, 1902. Women didn't have autonomy at the time. They just didn't exist. But the seeds of those were starting to be planted. And you could start to see changes in attitude. They are subtle, but they are there. And again, I really appreciate that. Because it's a historical novel, while I don't love them and they can make me uncomfortable because it's horrible to think that people were treated as less than for their gender, their sexual preference, whatever. It's unfortunately what it was like at that time, and it is well handled that it didn't feel nasty for nasty's sake or anything like that. But it also didn't feel like they were putting modern ideals into a more classical setting. I also want to talk a little bit about neurodivergence and, funny enough, LGBT a little bit, because Gabriel Ward is neurodivergent coded. You know, he is an absolute creature of habit. He is asexual, and it could, again, so easily be done for laughs and for cheap digs, and it never is. Even the people who think he's a bit weird because of his, you know, he has his walk at this time around Temple Gardens, and it's always in a certain direction, and it's, you know, the little like pattern he draws, the little almost sigil that he draws with his finger on, say, maybe the pad of his thumb or on a piece of furniture that settle him and calm him and make him feel confident. They're all in there, and they are just nice little touches. And, you know, his hyperfixation is absolutely the law and Temple. And again, they are really nicely done. They round the character out. They don't feel like cheap digs at things like that. Now, obviously, it's never said that what he's got, because this is a time where, again, mental health wasn't really a thing that was discussed unless you had melancholia or hysteria, and you were in somewhere like Bedlam and you did not want to be in those places. And yeah, it was just well done. It felt very kind. And I think that's important. Gabriel is seen as, a brilliant barrister, bit of an odd duck. And I like, he's an odd fellow, I think, is how he's regularly like described. But he's still highly respected, and people still like him in, their own way. While he is very, he's disinterested in women or men or anyone, romantically, and that's made clear. And that's why it turns out he was disinherited, because he was never going to take over the family estate and the title and have children and do all that. All he wanted was to practice law. And I can say that one without it being spoilery, because it's just a nice little bit of information you get about Gabriel Ward going through. And so, yeah, the representation is nicely done here. I've talked before about difficult subjects handled badly. Delicate subjects handled badly. And it's very easy to use things like neurodivergence or being asexual. And there's not a lot of good asexual representation in media anyway, but I think this does it really well. So yeah, that was a really nice one. That was a nice touch. It was sensitively done. I was really happy with it. There was a reason I did actually lend it to a neurodivergent friend, saying, I think you might enjoy this. He is actually, he's borrowing A Case of Mice and Murder and has been enjoying it. So that was really cool. The other thing is that this is a third-person omniscient book. That can be hard to write. I mean, I don't touch it. I don't do third-person omniscience because it's difficult. There is a little bit of head hopping occasionally, but it's done pretty solidly. I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't at any point feel like I was getting like this whiplash of going from like head to head to head, because you are following the plot and you get used to it, and it's just well crafted, to be honest. So the other thing is, I will say, it uses smart words, and occasionally even I was going like, I need a dictionary for this. So yeah, it was very intelligently written. It is so much fun, and it's got humour in it, and I think the humour is really nicely done as well. It totally goes into the history of Temple, and there is a note at the back. Do not read that first, because it will spoil the main plot of the story. And it does talk about, like, I did make a few little, artistic licenses with the layout of Temple, but I think that's okay. And it's like, it's absolutely okay. And the love for Temple is just so special. This book just feels special, and it is one of the best things I read last year, by a way too. So I'm really excited for the next book. Anyway, my brain is now starting to melt out my ear, and I'm going to let you go. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next week for another little bookish writerly chat. Take care, guys. Bye.